Okay, so before we go do the work, what we're going to be able to do is let's restate the domain and range of our three major inverse trig functions. So again, for our inverse sine function, also known as arc sine, all right, the domain, we're going to put anything from -1 to 1 in it, and then most crucial, the range is some value from -pi/2 to pi/2, right, or -90 degrees and 90 degrees, right? So that's what it's going to give us. For the inverse cosine, or what's also known as the arc cosine, right, the domain is also from -1 to 1, but its restricted domain is from 0 to pi, right? Or in degree mode, 0 degrees to 180 degrees. And then last but not least, the tangent, the inverse tangent, also known as the arc tangent, right? What it's going to basically give us, right, is its domain. You can put anything into it. Very, very strong function in terms of what you can put into it. But as far as the range is concerned, it's restricted also like sine from -pi/2 to pi/2, or -90 degrees to 90 degrees. Okay, so finding the exact value of of theta or y in the following things. Perhaps if we rewrote this now, I'm invoking the arc sine. So since I'm invoking the arc sine, I have restricted myself to that restriction. So we're basically asking ourselves, when is the sine of theta equal to 1? All right, and so in terms of that restriction right there, sine of theta is equal to 1 at theta equals pi/2. So that's the value we're going to get. Now, of course, we know there's an infinite number of values, right, because sine goes on and on and on forever. But because I'm invoking the inverse sine, the only one I'm going to get is the one that's restricted in that part of the domain. So pi/2, or if we were in degree mode, we'd say 90 degrees. All right, so I guess I am in degree mode. I said to use degrees, okay? Sorry about that. All right, I'll flip-flop between both because we really have to remember both. So again, what angle value makes the arc cosine equal to 1? Well, again, we're essentially asking cosine of what value of theta creates an output of 1. Again, we know there's an infinite number of them, but we're restricting ourselves to that part of the domain. We are invoking the arc cosine. So because we are invoking the arc cosine, it is a function that's been restricted. And so what value from 0 to pi makes cosine equal to 1? Well, that would be theta equals to 0 rad, or 0 degrees if we were in radian mode. So basically at the beginning of our little time frame. Same thing here. Since I'm invoking the arc tangent, I'm restricting myself to that area right there, that part of the range. So we're essentially trying to figure out, right, what angle value makes tangent equal to 1. Well, in this restriction, we know there's an infinite number of them, but if we restrict ourselves to this, we're in quad 1, and that value would be pi/4, right, which we also know to be 45 degrees. So that's all it's going to give us back. And again, let me go ahead and just kind of prove that to you again one more time. All right, here's my scientific calculator. And I'm going to ask myself, right, well, we already know, right, what's the, let me turn myself to degree mode, right, if I look at the arc tangent of 1, right, what we get, and the only value we get is 45. It's the only one I can receive because of the restriction. If I looked at the arc cosine, oops, let me clear that out. If we looked at the arc cosine of 1, right, because that's what we have there, right, what I get is an output of 0. Again, we know there's an infinite number of them, but because we're invoking the inverse function, we're only going to get 1. And then last but not least, we have over here the arc sine, or what we know to be the inverse sine of 1. And what we're going to do is get one value, and that one value is 90. All right, we know there's an infinite number of them, but because we're invoking the inverse sine functions, the inverse functions, we know that there's only going to be one. And so that we're just going to have to be very cognizant as we move along. So for the next one, right, we're essentially rewriting this. We're talking about the sine of some angle equals the square root of 2 over 2. So in this domain, in that very restricted domain, what value makes the sign positive and square root of 2 over 2? Well, we're in quad 1, right? And that value is 45 degrees, or in radian mode, pi over 4. So that's what we receive in our graphing calculator. Here, we're again rewriting this. We're talking about what angle makes this equal to a half. Well, cosine's positive in quadrant number 1, right? So we're in quad 1. And what value makes cosine equal to a half when we're in there? Well, it's 60 degrees, or what we know as pi over 3 in radian mode. So that's the value. That's the only value we're going to get back if we use our calculator. Same thing here. We're trying to find the angle value that makes the tangent equal to the square root of 3 all over 3. All right, and I believe what that also is going to be a 60-degree angle, or what we call pi over 3. It's only going to give us the one in the positive quadrant that does that. I'm pretty sure I got the right one. Yeah. Okay. Or no, actually it's 30 degrees. I'm sorry. I have this reversed, or pi over 6. Okay, so 30 degrees and pi over 6, because we're going to need a 1/2 and the square root of 3 over 2, which is 1 over the square root of 3. Rationalizing the denominator. So sine is a half, and cosine square root of 3 over 2 at 30 degrees. So I kind of messed that up. So let me just go ahead and just show this again on my Desmos calculator, just so we can see that we are right, or that I'm not lying to you, basically. All right. So what we have here then is we're talking about the arc. We're talking about the arc sine, and we're talking about the number we're talking about here on the top is the square root of 2, and on the bottom we have 2. And what did the calculator give me? One and only one value, the 45-degree angle, because it's restricted by that. We know there's many that does it, but we're restricted by that. Same thing with the cosine, right? My inverse cosine of 1 over 2. Right? Well, all it's giving me is the value of 60 degrees. We know there's many values that create that, but since we're using the arc cosine, right, we're only going to get the 1, right? So that value there. And then last but not least, right, the arc tangent of the square root of 3 over 3, right? What we're getting is the 30 degrees. We're only getting the one value that's in the restricted domain. So yeah, I know you guys can reach for your calculators. I get that, but understanding why is more important here than just being able to, to create a value on your calculator. So let me finish off this stuff here. As a matter of fact, how about I got 6 more to do, and I'm already 8 minutes into this. So let me pause here and cut to another video, and we'll finish this off without the calculator. All right, you guys can always check that with the calculator.